What would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be the one tearing you down? For Daniel, that question wasn't hypothetical. It was the bitter reality of his life with his father-in-law, Richard. Daniel had always been a quiet dreamer, the kind of man who worked hard and loved deeply. He wasn't perfect, but he was honest, and he poured his heart into building a life with his wife, Emily. Yet, Richard, a man of wealth and influence, never saw him as enough. To Richard, Daniel was a nobody, a man with a modest job and a degree he scoffed at, calling it useless at every family gathering. But the truth? Richard's disdain hid a darker secret, one Daniel would uncover in a way that would change everything. Daniel met Emily in college, where their shared love for literature sparked late-night conversations and stolen glances. He wasn't rich, but he was driven, earning a degree in English while working 2 jobs. Emily saw his heart, his grit, and his quiet strength. They married young, against Richard's protests. Richard, a real estate tycoon, wanted a son-in-law who matched his wealth, not some bookworm scraping by as a freelance editor. At their wedding, Richard's toast was a thinly veiled jab. To Emily, who could have had anyone, but chose this. The room laughed. Daniel didn't. He swallowed the sting, for Emily's sake. The insults didn't stop. At every dinner, Richard found ways to belittle Daniel. An English degree? What's that good for? Writing poems while my daughter pays the bills. Emily defended Daniel, but Richard's words cut deep. Worse, Daniel learned Richard had been spreading lies, telling family and friends Daniel's degree was fake, that he dropped out and lied to cover it up. The betrayal burned. Daniel wasn't just fighting for respect, was fighting for his truth. One evening, after another humiliating dinner, Daniel overheard Richard on a call in his study. The door was ajar, and Richard's voice was low, urgent. "No one can know," he hissed. "Bury it deeper." Curiosity gripped Daniel. He shouldn't have snooped, but something told him this was bigger than family drama. Late that night, while Emily slept, Daniel slipped into Richard's home office. He wasn't a hacker, but he knew enough to navigate Richard's poorly secured computer. What he found made his blood run cold. Richard had been embezzling funds from his company for years. Hidden files revealed offshore accounts, fake invoices, and emails to a shady accountant. The man who called Daniel useless had built his empire on lies, cheating clients and investors to fund his lavish life. Daniel's hands shook as he copied the files onto a USB drive. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. But exposing Richard would hurt Emily, who adored her father despite his flaws. Could Daniel destroy the man she loved to save his own dignity? Days passed, and Daniel wrestled with his choice. He loved Emily too much to act rashly. He confronted Richard privately, hoping for a confession, maybe even redemption. "I know what you've done," Daniel said, holding up the USB. Richard's face paled, but his arrogance held. "You think you can ruin me, boy? You're nothing. Emily will hate you for this." Daniel's heart sank. Richard wasn't sore, he was scared of being caught. That's when Daniel knew he couldn't stay silent. He didn't want a spectacle, but he needed the truth out. Daniel contacted a trusted journalist, someone he'd worked with on freelance projects. He shared the evidence anonymously, ensuring Emily's name stayed out of it. The story broke a week later. Real estate mogul caught in embezzlement scandal. Richard's empire crumbled overnight. Lawsuits piled up, and his reputation shattered. Emily was devastated, not just by her father's crimes, but by the betrayal of his lies about Daniel. The fallout wasn't easy. Emily cried for days, torn between her love for her father and the truth Daniel had uncovered. But in those quiet moments, she saw Daniel's courage not for revenge, but for honesty. "You did what he never could," she told him. "You stood for something." Daniel didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who'd lost a piece of his family but gained his self-respect. Months later, Richard faced trial, and Daniel and Emily started fresh. Daniel took a teaching job, sharing his love for literature with students who reminded him of his younger self. He wasn't rich or powerful, but he was enough. The truth had cost him pain, but it had given him something greater, a life built on integrity, not lies. And in the end, that was worth more than any empire.